Good afternoon. My name is Diana Lawson, and I am the Dean of the Seidman College of Business, and I'd like to welcome you to Seidman's COVID-19 webinar series for West Michigan business. Today's topic is rethinking customer engagement. We have with us 4 very well-experienced experts in marketing, and we have one of our newer to West Michigan faculty who will be moderating this webinar. So I would like to introduce you to Dr. Eric Kennedy, who is an assistant professor of marketing in our college, and I will turn this over to him.
Diana, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for taking the time out of your day for being here. And I don't know about the rest of you, but we're having to do different things today than we did pre-COVID. So this morning I was in our business building here and a couple of other buildings on campus downtown, wearing my mask, testing out microphones to see how the microphones would work with the mask, checking acoustics in the room, looking at where the professor or the faculty member can and can't walk in the classroom so that we keep our social distancing. And so we're having to replan and rethink how we can engage with our students this fall. And it's no different than any of us have had to do in our own personal lives. We've had to replan how we can engage with our family members, how we can engage with the public when we go grocery shopping or to the park or out to the lake. Where are we supposed to wear a mask and where are we not? Where is it safe? And the way that we've had to replan our lives is no different than the way that a brand has to replan its life when engaging the customer. And so I'm very happy to have this expert panel with us today to talk about this exactly, rethinking customer engagement. So with us today, we have Ben Gott, founder of Boxed Water is Better. Ben, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Kim Hafley, marketing director at Foster, Swift, Collins, and Smith, PC. Kim, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bill Anderson, our business growth consultant at Michigan Small Business Development Center. Bill, thank you. And last but not least,
Thank you.
Gary, I'm going to mispronounce it again, Gary. We just talked about this off camera. We'll call him Gary M., Director of Brand Management and Product Portfolio for Amway. Glad to say I'm from Oklahoma, so some of the names that are from the northern part of the country are a little bit tricky for this kid from down south. So thank you all, panelists, for being here. And let's jump right into it. Ben, I want to start with you if I can. And all it takes is for any of us to look at the news of the day, open up social media on our phone, have a conversation with a friend, and realize that the status quo of what engagement means has changed. So in your business, Ben, how noticeable has this change been in this post-COVID or current COVID world?
I can talk a little bit on Boxed Water. Yes, I'm indeed the founder, but I'm not as involved in the kind of the day-to-day anymore. But I have a handful of other projects I work on where social media played a huge role in their growth. And if you think about Boxed Water, I think it's 10 years old, maybe a little bit over that. And even 10 years ago, social media was not a primary channel for communication. We were still doing traditional, ad buying or physical marketing, things like that any company would do, where you were in person. If the change was happening 2 or 3 years ago at a rapid pace to move over to social media and the web, it turned into warp speed in the past 3 to 4 months. And some are doing it better than others. I think all of us are navigating how to do it. Not only are we dealing with the pandemic, we're dealing with societal kind of unrest and how all of that's navigated. So I think we're going to need to see incredible new uses of the internet beyond just the social channels that we're used to try and give some physicality and emotion back to product launch, product marketing. And I think, per usual, it will likely go back to a more story-like format where we're explaining why a brand exists, what it can do to help the world or move things forward, as opposed to just traditional shiny advertisements, if that makes sense.
Sure. And I'm glad you brought up the physical aspect. We'll talk about that as we go through this next hour, because it's a big component that's missing now. We can't shake hands. We can't do a lot of things that we used to be able to do. So Dell, I'll throw it to you with small business. How have you noticed the status quo being changed with COVID?
Well, it really has become a couple of things. One, cash has become much more important. For the clients and companies we consult with, one of the first questions we ask is, how's your cash flow? Because it's one of the things that's going to be needed. Cash is still king. And we've addressed that many different ways. The second aspect is, have you talked to people? What we have found, especially in my businesses also, for example, we learned from '08 in my businesses that if you don't talk to people, you could lose people. So not only meant talking to existing customers, potential customers, or whatever, but make sure you're going back through your supply chain because they've been affected too. And a lot of people may not think about that. What does it mean in the supply chain? So make sure they're still having a business. And lastly, I'll mention, I also teach over at Grand Valley in my marketing strategy class last semester. I mentioned that it's very difficult to survive without a website, but you probably still could. I don't believe that statement will ever come out of my mouth ever again. If you haven't moved electronic by now, with all due respect, folks, I don't know what you're waiting for, because unless you're in a business that you really don't need it, electronic commerce, electronic communication, electronic, whatever you want to call it, building a brand is not going away, and it's only continued to get stronger.
Yeah, that's where it's at, without a doubt. I want to just ask you a quick follow-up, Dale. You talked about talking to people. So you mean getting away from Facebook messages or emails into a telephone conversation?
Yeah, to bring an audio visual in, this goes more for texting. It actually has a phone feature to it that a lot of people, especially my children, don't realize.
Right.
Looking at, using the phone and actually physically, if you will, through a phone call, talking to people.
Very good. Absolutely right. Gary, how about you? Out at Amway, how are things changing?
Well, I can tell you, yeah, consumer engagement has definitely changed, and I think it's actually becoming more and more important as a result of COVID-19. Without the ability to have face-to-face interaction, we've had to think of ways to engage with customers differently. To be honest, we've seen increases in our business overall due to the nature of the products we sell. For example, nutritional supplements driven by the heightened awareness around the importance of maintaining your immunity and maintaining your health. Additionally, cleaning products, which are driven by the heightened awareness of keeping your home clean and safe and germ-free. But at the same time, we've actually seen a reduction in beauty products. So as you might imagine, people just spending more or less time because they're going out less frequently. So there's been a shift in our business for sure. And there's also been a great impact on our supply chain. As you might imagine, with the increase in demand, some categories, our supply chain has gotten constrained as well. But I think these shifts are here to stay. I think eventually when we come out the other side, I believe there'll always be an increased need for health and wellness as a result, and an increased need for that driving a deeper level of customer engagement.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, people are more cognizant about germs now, where germs can live and how long they can live and what it takes to knock them out. So it's kind of eye-opening that it takes a pandemic like this to have people realize, say, oh, well, I should be washing my hands for 20 or 30 seconds, and I need to wipe down all these surfaces. So it's strange that this has come out of this COVID crisis. And Kim, I want to throw it to you now. With your business, how have you noticed this change manifesting itself?
Well, as a law firm, we've seen a lot of different things. First off, going back to what Dale said, cash is king, and a lot of our businesses are very concerned about their cash flow, and they're looking at, do they have the appropriate forms in place, documents in place? Certainly, we're really encouraging everyone to keep the communication open. As we said, pick up the phone, talk to people, particularly if they're getting behind in their bills. But really looking at, having a foundation, a legal foundation in place for collection should you go down that. And that's just one facet as a full service law firm. What we're really seeing is that with things changing, obviously we've had over 100 executive orders since the pandemic hit that changes a lot of things. So we have to be very quick to communicate that information to our clients. So depending on the client and their relationship with the attorney, we're doing a lot of e-blasts, we've had weeks where we've had as many as 5 go out to our clients based on what's going on, because our goal is to help them know of things that have changed, to help them mitigate the risk with their businesses. So we're really focusing on all the different communication channels, and that includes not only the e-blast, but we've done webinars, videos, podcasts, the whole gambit.
Yeah, it's tough to be proactive in a time like this because things are just changing so quickly. And Kim, you talked about some of these strategies, e-blast, webinars like we're doing right now. But are there other strategies that you have seen that are successful or that your firm has deployed that kind of creates positive engagement with customers?
You know, I think one of the things that has happened is that everybody has their own communication style and their communication preferences. And so what we're seeing is that it really varies upon the client and that client's makeup and the type of business they're in and the type of industry they're in. So we've had to deploy different strategies for different industries and different types of clients. We have used virtually all of the other strategies that the other panels have talked about, such as, picking up the phone and calling people, doing small Zoom meetings with the teams, doing additional legal training with our clients using Teams, sending links to videos, sending links to other resources. So we really tried to, based on the practice group, customize what our clients need, and I think that in these times like this is what we have to do to maintain that engagement. Is there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. We really kind of have to look at the various markets, industries, and then break down our strategy according to that, what those needs are.
Absolutely. Kim, hold that thought. I'm going to come right back to you. First, I have an announcement for the audience. We are taking questions from the audience. So if, as we're talking through this webinar with the panelists and something is kind of sticking out in your mind you would like us to ask, please send a message to the chat function and we'll try to get through as many as we can at the end of this webinar. Thank you. And so Kim, coming back to you, we're talking about how we have to learn about all these customers and what their preferences are, and there's not a cookie cutter approach. But in order for us as a brand or as a business to learn about our customers, we have to talk to them. And so think about all the different brands that a consumer may engage with. Have you seen anything where consumers are just getting tired of it? They're getting fatigued with answering questions and answering surveys for brands.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think we've become much more selective. I'm going to fess up that I might be a Survey Monkey junkie, and that at times I have probably overused that tool. And I would say that while I'm still using that tool, I'm being much more selective. And when it comes to our attorneys, I'm asking for anecdotal information that we can use so that we can minimize that. And I'm making sure when I do use SurveyMonkey that I'm asking questions that I'm really going to use the data, and I test those questions beforehand to make sure that I'm asking them right the first time and I don't have to go back for clarification.
Sure, you should come teach my marketing research class. You sound just like my textbook right now. It's fantastic. I'd love to hear it in practice. And one small adjustment to my announcement. Please use the Q&A function, not the chat function, to ask your questions. Thank you very much. So Ben, I'll swing it back around to you now, talking about strategies. So are there strategies that you have deployed in any of your projects or that you've seen that are successful with kind of getting this positive engagement going with customers?
I think the webinar thing, I think we could probably all say that we're some level of Zoom fatigue, some level of fatigue of just staring at screens and things like that. So there's a small education project I have it's not a non-for-profit, but it doesn't make enough profit for me to call it profitable. So it's kind of this sandbox where we get to play around with some things. And we've used Instagram Live, which is basically Zoom, like what we're doing right here, allowing other people to join in. But trying to be as creative as possible with whatever format it is you're using to communicate, learn to be concise with it. These Zoom calls before for so many people were an every once in a while type thing, so they wasn't something you fatigued over. So everything I think of strategy-wise right now is split between 50% being quiet and listening, watching consumer behavior, kind of absorbing it as opposed to acting too quickly on things. And the other 50% is trying to think of what's going to be enjoyable for a customer to experience. I think surveys can be incredibly enjoyable experience if they're not highly formulaic. If you can tell that the company is respectful of your time and is making something interesting. So for me, it's a 50% listening, learning, and 50% attempting to be kind of innovative.
Yeah, absolutely. Creativity right now is key because everything,
absolutely.
social media feeds to the airwaves are just getting bombarded over and over again with messages. And one of the messages that sticks out in my head is every time you turn on the television, there's an ad talking about the new normal. We're in the new normal now and how we're adjusting as a business. And to your point, I don't think they're listening to what consumer sentiment is, and they're not being creative. So brands, and hopefully we'll get into this later, need to think about how to differentiate themselves from everybody else that's proposing the same COVID message.
Yeah, there's an immense amount of noise right now.
Yeah.
To stand outside of that, you don't necessarily need to be louder, maybe just a bit different.
Oh, very good line. I like it. Dale, small businesses, what are some strategies you've seen that have been successful to get some positive engagement moving?
First of all, to Kim, I think you should trademark Survey Monkey Junkie. I think there might be a business there. Yeah, you're a lawyer, you can look it up. So anyway, back to strategies that have been successful for small businesses. It's really been a couple of things. One, it's kind of go feeding to what you've just discussed, Eric. What was your sustainable competitive advantage when you started? Reason to believe, whatever you want to call it. Is it still valid? And if it is it still valid in the form that you started your business in? Because a lot of things we're telling people right now, this is not a reopening. You're in a grand opening situation. You know, you have to address it that the business is starting up from scratch. Consumer, yes, you have research, you had experience, you had a bunch of other things pre-COVID, but COVID has changed the game. So address it that you're almost doing a grand opening. Does your sustainable competitive advantage still work? And how do you now engage? We talk about, you know, we've talked a lot about electronic media. That's not going away for those who wanted to. I'm old enough to remember when it didn't exist. The internet was a defense project somewhere, you know, and when I was running brands, you had to actually go talk to people and wait 6 months to get results to see if you're doing good things. You know, that doesn't exist today. But the point is, if you're doing a reopening, you're using electronic media, for example, like YouTube, can you do YouTube channels? Can you do YouTube videos to help explain? And lastly, I'll mention, this isn't a small business. When I walked into Lowe's last week, first thing I saw on the door on the left was the blow up screens that you could put movies on. Who would have ever thought that before, that you're going to see that in a Lowe's? I thought that was very creative by the supplier to actually put that right on the door, because home movies now and home entertainment is a big thing.
Yeah, and I can attest to that with 3 kids at home. We've been home since March. Mom and Dad are starting to run out of ideas to keep things exciting around the house. So any help that a brand or a company can give parents and families is certainly appreciated, I know. Gary, let's hear your thoughts on this. Successful strategies for positive engagement with customers.
Well, you know, similar answer. We're engaging with people more online than ever before through events, through things like Facebook Live events, virtual meetings with our Amway distributors, and providing tools to help them engage with their customers online rather than in person, such as digital catalogs, digital communication materials. So that's becoming more and more important. We've generally placed a much greater emphasis on the quality of the content, call it the creative, but it has to be very much more engaging than ever before. So we have to pay attention to all the content we put online, because that's what's driving a deeper level of engagement than ever. We've also accelerated an initiative to improve the customer experience of our website through things like experience design and more engaging content. So you can't underestimate the importance of the content and the experience online in order to drive a deeper level of engagement.
Yeah, if a customer gets frustrated with an interface right now, they'll go down the road and go to the competition. It's just a few clicks away, right? They're right.
It's becoming a cost of doing business now.
Yeah, they're right next door with you online versus halfway across the globe. So it's something we all have to be aware of. And Kim, I want to circle back with you. I know I said Q&A from the audience would come at the end, but I think this question fits in well with this conversation as we're talking about reaching out to consumers. So have you noticed a change, Kim, in the personal information privacy conversation in this time when companies need to rely more on e-commerce and social channels?
You know, that's a tough question. I think that everybody, and I'm going to kind of vary that. Everybody, as we're in this situation and we're looking at the whole client engagement and so much of it being online, there's the whole data privacy, cybersecurity issue, and so we really try and focus on that, and obviously have systems in place. We're a law firm to make sure that our security is as high as possible, and I think we encourage all of our clients to do that as well. You know, I think that one of the challenges in this time in looking at all of this, and I'm going to kind of go back to the previous question a little bit, is making sure that as we're encouraging clients to engage, we provide them ways to engage that they're comfortable. And what we've really tried to do with that is in our call to actions, ensure with our call to actions that there's a variety of ways for individuals to connect with us, and that these communication means are safe and secure.
Yeah, very good. Reinforcing and reassuring customers that we may have to do a lot of things online, but we've got this encryption and whatever the jargon is. I'm not an IT specialist, but I know it's out there, and we can really secure and lock down the information that we're sharing.
And I think too, technology helps us. One of the governor's executive orders was specifically dealt with, you know, virtual signings for anybody who needed to have maybe end-of-life documents signed and couldn't wait, or there wasn't the ability to have them signed in person. And there was a mechanism to do that. And with that, we develop our own policy to really ensure the security of that on a variety of levels. And I think that's really what companies, not just law firms, need to do as we're going forward, is making sure that we're always looking at what processes we need to have in place to make our consumers feel comfortable about doing business with us.
Absolutely. So thank you for that, Kim. I want to move on to my next question. I had one come in from the audience that really fits in well with what I had planned. And so the question from the audience is, and then I'll follow up with what I have here, social media and email blasts, according to this audience member, are becoming less effective due to this fatigue that we just talked about, which I think is probably accurate. And so I'm going to add this into my question. As fast as things are moving, we have breaking news every day, if not every hour. So can we create some kind of a proactive strategy? And Ben, I'll come to you first on this. Can we create a proactive strategy that keeps engagement positive and reduces this fatigue that we may have from email blasts and social media? So can we be proactive in our engagement? Or is the market moving so quickly we have to be reactive?
Well, I think it maybe goes back to my 50-50 approach. I mean, I think being proactive right now is more about listening and watching and consuming and being careful to, because usually when you say proactive, it means doing something, not listening and stopping. But there's a couple brands who, whether it's COVID related or some of the Black Lives Matter stuff that's going on, have put their foot in their mouth by acting too quickly, I think, or not gathering people around them or a focus group of some sort to kind of run things past. But I don't know. And then just kind of another way to kind of mention it, I think something to do with the fatigue that's interesting is so many people are consuming the internet through basically two channels right now. We're consuming it through Twitter and Facebook included Instagram. So it's this really interesting, very narrow tube that we're consuming it through. And I'm starting to wonder, of course, we've got Wall Street Journal and New York Times. I'm starting to wonder if there's the opportunity to actually, as some brands, lessen the amount of posting that they're doing, lessen the amount of sharing that they're doing, and focus instead of kind of keeping momentum, instead focus on only producing things that are really interesting and really going to grab someone's attention. I almost think that doing less right now is an attention attractor as opposed to doing more. I know that's an abstract way of looking at it, but even some of my younger friends, there's just a general fatigue, and it may be better to do less right now than to do more.
Okay, well, Ben, let me follow up with you on this then. Hypothetical, I've got a small shop in downtown Grand Rapids. My customers have not come back into my shop yet. It doesn't matter what I sell because it's a hypothetical. My customers don't have good engagement with me on social media right now because everyone is trying to engage with them in social media. So what do I do to step back and listen? Where should I be listening and who should I be listening to?
Well, I think some of these webinars that we're attending are really useful. I think one thing I do that's very detailed, but we used to do in the very early days of Boxed Water when we launched, was anyone who tagged us in it, I'd kind of go back through their profiles and do a bit of research and try and build customer profiles and stories about who it was that was sharing it. I mean, we have all sorts of data on who your, you know, how many male, female followers do you have, what's their age group and all that, but like, what are they doing with their time? What kind of stories are they posting? Things like that, or even reaching out directly to your customers. If we're talking about social media, let's use Instagram, for example. As crazy as it sounds, you could be individually DMing, direct messaging rather, you know, 10, 20, 30 customers. It's going to take more time than doing a general survey, but that customer is now going to see you as a more human brand and somebody who's interacting with them directly. So again, quite a bit of work, but for someone else who used to maybe keep the shop, you know, work the register, they have more time now. And I think it's just, it goes back to my creativity thing. You have such an opportunity to do something that seems totally left field right now because all the rules are out the window.
Sure. And that's a good point, is we've talked about surveys, but there's a whole other side to research to where it's an in-depth interview or a focus group. And you could kind of run a mock focus group or an interview through an Instagram message or a Facebook message.
Yep.
And you can get very good feedback from your customers. I mean, if you have a small shop, maybe you know a couple of regulars that follow you on Facebook, send them a message, ask them how things are going, what's on their mind. And you can probably get some very good detailed information from them versus running a survey with 100 responses or 200 responses.
It's a small detail I wanted to add on. This is an interesting story. When restaurants, I'm actually based here in Chicago now and split my time between Michigan, but when the restaurants started opening back up here a few weeks ago, or the patios at least, I got a phone call from an unknown number and decided to answer it. It was a chef at a restaurant I used to frequent saying, "Hey, we're getting the band back together. We'd love for you to stop." I mean, that to me was absurd almost. But he said, "Yeah, we just decided to call a handful of people, and here I am talking about that." And I think that we're so used to customer service being the way you interact with a brand, but being proactive and reaching out to your customers and asking them how they're doing could be really powerful.
And that goes back to, Dale, what you said at the very beginning, pick up the phone and call somebody. Mm-hmm. And kind of we see how that's come around now in this conversation, Dale. So we know you're a big fan of that phone, that thing that actually has buttons. You can hit a green icon and talk to somebody. So what are some other strategies you think that people could be proactive with to get some positive engagement?
Well, first of all, I want to agree with Ben. People need to listen more. I mean, there is a ton of information coming, and it's easy to get caught up, and it's easy to get down. And we tend to be a ready, fire, aim group of people in the United States versus, you know, really listening and absorbing. So I tend to agree with that. I do agree with that. Second of all, I also think you need to be more personalized. I agree with that also. I've said it before, it's not just social, it's not just blasts, it's not just surveys. It's easy to do that. I don't mean that to be flippantly. It's easy just to send a blast to 100 people and say, I'm done for the day, versus actually trying to call 100 people during that day. So you have to put the work in, because I also agree with Ben said, what else are you doing if there's people not coming in? I also believe you have to keep the messaging positive now. What we have told people is expect the worst. There could be around, don't think there may be a round two, plan for a round two. Don't, you know, think that you're going to have to go back. Now, whether we do or not, I don't know. But if you're planning for it, you can't get surprised the wrong way, if you will. And when you're doing that, you have to be positive. I'm going to go back to what I just said. There is so much negativity out there. The press, the ads, just the example of my house right now. My son graduated from Michigan in May, had 2 job offers, is now living at home for God knows how long now. I mean, because those went away. Now, one was downtown New York, one was downtown Chicago. As a parent, you're kind of going, I'm okay with that. But I mean, the point is you're getting a lot of things right now that are negative, negative, negative. So you need to be positive in your messaging. How to do that, and I'll just give one quick example. I will say I've probably seen more mobile billboards in the town of Grand Rapids in the past month than I have in probably the last 10 years. Mobile billboards, and they're on their truck, they drive around town, kind of old school. But you notice them nowhere now because you're so fatigued on every other messaging that they may be coming back into vogue. So one of the things we tell people is old may be becoming new again to offset some of the fatigue that's going on.
And the frame that you put your marketing message in is very important. There is a lot of negativity out there, and fear can prompt consumers into a purchase. However, I will agree with what you've said that fear right now is overdone. I think that it could be, a marketing message could be very positive, and you could go along the lines of things are uncertain out in the world right now, but guess what? Here at my store, we're doing X, Y, Z to keep us safe and to keep you safe. So come on in. Odell, thank you for that. Let's see, Gary, I'll throw this one to you now. Tell me about your thoughts on being reactive versus proactive and how to remain positive in this world.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of this pandemic, it felt like it was more reactive, but because this was new to everybody. But I think as we're settling in, we're all adjusting to the new norm, and we do need to be more proactive. It underscores the importance to me of online communications and online content because there's fewer opportunities offline. And Benjamin was talking about this earlier, as was Dale. I think in order to overcome the messaging fatigue, people will always engage in content that's relevant to them. Okay, so how do you make it relevant to them? It's got to be personalized. Okay, so you have to get very sophisticated in personalizing the message, because that's a point as it becomes relevant, and relevant messages is what they'll engage in versus a mass communicated message.
Yep, I agree. And Kim, let's wrap this one up with you and the law firm. Can the firm be proactive, or is your industry such that you have to be reactive to what your clients are responding to?
I kind of look at it this way, and that is certainly we have to be reactive for us in some of what's happening with COVID and what we need to communicate to our clients so they can maintain the continuity of their business. But I think what we're really trying to do is have a proactive process. So as we're looking at these things come down, we're looking at how do we get this out there in a way that's meaningful to them, that we don't over communicate because everybody is fatigued. We're getting the key information to them in a format that's adding value, and that also during all of this, while we're trying to turn things around quickly, because there's a couple hundred law firms in Michigan, and everybody's trying to get their message out fast. How are we getting it out differently, and how are we adding value to them, and maintaining our branding and our branding standards as we're getting that out? So I think to a certain amount we're reactive, but we're trying to keep that process as proactive as possible, so that at the end of the day, when they see something from us, they're like, oh no, not another e-blast, or not another video, or not, but oh, I probably need to look at that.
Yeah, the value add is very important. As a consumer, when I think about a purchase I'm going to make and I'm looking at a specific brand, I think, well, brand X, what have you done for me lately? What value have you given me so that I can consume your product again? And so I think that's a value add phrase. Is a very important one that we have to think about. We have to, as a brand or a company or a product, really prove ourselves to our consumers about why they should use us, how we will benefit their life through the use of our product. And I would like to hear from the panelists as we talk about this idea of reactive versus proactive. And I'll let whoever wants to jump in first here jump in. What do you think about the world of higher education being proactive versus reactive? There is so much mud in the water, as we would say in Oklahoma or Texas, about future plans. What's going to happen in the fall? If I'm a parent or I'm a student, is my class going to be online? Is my class going to be in person? Where am I going to live? So should higher ed kind of follow this re-grand opening approach? or what should higher ed's message be to consumers?
I'll jump in because as I mentioned, I had one graduating, I one in college, one in high school right now. Again, if you talk to my grandfather research, talking to my children, they missed the interaction that happened when school shut down. Classes online was a hard part, but it was more the social aspect of it. How can higher ed lead there? That's a really tough question because it flies in the face of the regulations, if you will. But in some ways, higher ed, I think, has to lead, because if you're just going to go to 100% online, and this is not being meant to be disrespectful to anybody, now you're the University of Phoenix or Capella or these online universities that have been around forever.
Sure.
That's not the experience you want at Grand Valley State or other type of institutions. So net, the key is, I think, in how you lead is to try to keep, it's not so much, all due respect, the academic side of it this moment, but it's marrying the academic side still with the social part of it that college offers.
Yeah.
That's about the best I have with that.
I think one of the other differentiators that, the colleges and institutions have is the career building opportunities they offer. And Grand Valley has a phenomenal reputation for the internships and the real world opportunities that they provide their students. And I think one of the things is going back is, if we do have to maintain this virtual environment for a while, how do you do that when you aren't interacting face to face? Because to me, I've had some just fantastic interns that have come from Grand Valley, Hope College, MSU, and those programs are just as important to, for those of us in business as the classroom.
Okay. Very good. Ben, did you raise your hand?
No, I did.
Okay. All right.
I would agree with those comments, though. I think the social side of it is something that I guess that would put me in the proactive category, where we're just listening and watching the impact of the lack of social interaction on a variety of things, but higher education and high school as well being something we won't know for 12 to 14 months.
Yeah. There's a lot up in the air right now, a lot of uneasy parents and uneasy students about what the future will hold. So I think getting messages out to everyone is important. Now, we had a question come in, since we're talking about phone calls, that raises a very valid point. A lot of times, if I get a phone call that I don't have saved into my contact list, I'm not going to answer it. That's just the nature of the beast. And so what are your thoughts, panelists? And Dale, I'll start with you because you've been passionate about making these phone calls. So what do you do if your client, your customer, doesn't answer their phone? Would you think about diverting capital into developing and marketing different products and services instead of a phone call? What are your thoughts?
First of all, I am that person that if I don't know the number, it goes to voicemail.
Okay.
I respect that. I think the first aspect of that, Eric, is think about the voicemail you're going to leave. Don't have it, oh, it went into voicemail, now what am I going to say? Because that comes across as unprofessional and a whole bunch of other things. You're probably not getting your messaging across. So it's back to my previous comment almost of preparing for the worst. Prepare that it's going into voicemail. And also then prepare not to leave a 3-minute dissertation on what's going on. 30 seconds or less, 15 is preferred. I mean, we're down into the social media rules almost. But make sure you're saying, hey, it's almost like here, reaching out, wanted to let you know I'm still here, worried about how you're doing or care about how you're doing, you're doing, anything I can do to help. Even if they don't respond to that personalization of knowing you're thinking about them, I believe will grow your brand and play and really help you down the road.
Okay. I would also be sure if I'm leaving a voicemail, I have my name and company and say, this is Eric from GVSU at the beginning of the voicemail. And then again at the end of the voicemail, again, this is Eric from GVSU. Hope you have a fantastic day.
300%, better said.
Yeah. Gary, how about you? What do you think if the phone call doesn't work? Do you think that the company should divert and invest into other services or product marketing?
Yeah, I think there's great answers about the phone call for sure, but I think it's a matter of understanding where your customer is along the customer journey. Are they way up in the upper funnel or building awareness, or are they way down in the driving loyalty or consideration, purchase, and loyalty? So just understanding where they are and ensuring that you're able to reach them where they are, not where you think they are, but where they actually are in a medium and with a message that's relevant at that point. And I'll just take an example. If someone has visited your website and they haven't made a purchase, you probably can capture some data on that and just engage in some retargeting, remarketing activities. If they continue to interact, that leads you down the funnel further towards eventually towards conversion and advocacy. So it's just understanding where they are and personalizing the message and the tactics according to that. It's my opinion.
Okay, very good. Ben, I want to go to you with this question that just came in. Talking about reopenings, like the chef that called you and said, we're getting the band back together. Do you think it would be a good idea for a brand to use this reopening as an opportunity to showcase a new product? Or should this reopening focus on, this is what we've done great in the past, our core competencies, and we're back again with these same core competencies?
I think it's a great question. I suppose it's somewhat contextual to what it is they did as a business, how they're performing financially at that time. I mean, yeah, great progress is usually made from like really tough times like this, but a few wrong steps can also quickly deplete your cash situation, and raising right now is challenging. Banking in general right now is challenging, traditional commercial banking. So I'm not giving a very concise answer. I guess if there's something, the restaurant one was probably not an applicable example, but if you've created something that people find comfort in and find, you're a classic product or whatever it may be, staying the same is probably a good thing right now. People are kind of leaning towards the things that have made them comfortable. But if you're known as an innovative company, I think you need to show, and you have an opportunity and a stage to show that you will continue the trend of innovation. And it could be a great time to launch a new product. I would just, like we're seeing, I'm a partner at a venture fund, and like we're seeing with anyone, be extremely cautious about your cash situation, because whether it's second wave or whatever, we don't know the long-term 2-3 year economic impact from a job standpoint, and we don't know what banking would be like. So if you're classic, stick with it. If you're known for innovation, I'd continue to innovate.
And I think you could also, if you're classic, focus on those core competencies, and you can use this reopening as a way to test a product. If you're going through new product development, get some of those key customers that we've talked about, bring them into the shop, have them look at the product before the full-scale launch goes out to get their thoughts, because most brands likely have had a very limited interaction. And so if we can get those people in here to look at this product as we develop it and then launch it, that might be the safer bet.
I would agree.
And we've talked, Kim, I want to come to you now. We've talked very broadly throughout this call now, the last 43 minutes, about customers, as if the customer is this one singular being. But we all know about demographics, and we know about differences in behaviors. So Kim, with your company and your marketing efforts, have you seen behavior changes happen more prevalent in one demographic over another, or has the reactions been the same across the board?
I think the actions have been more about people's perception of risk. People that are very risk adverse are looking to make sure that they have their training plans in place as they bring their employees back to the workplace to minimize potential employee litigation. They're making sure they have their forms in place so that they can pursue collection strategies if they have to. So I think for us, it hasn't been so much, the demographic of, an age or an income level, but really their comfort level with the risk and probably the position of their business.
Okay. And Kim, I want to backtrack just a minute with you. We were talking about competitive advantage, and you mentioned a few questions ago that your firm is one of, 100, 200, who knows how many firms, law firms in the state of Michigan. So how does a company like you that offer professional services with competitors around every corner, how do you really create that sustainable advantage through marketing and not be viewed as just a commodity that I can get anywhere?
I think for us, it goes back to what we've all mentioned previously, is it's building those relationships. I think particularly with professional service providers, you know, we're helping a lot of people with their businesses, their livelihoods. They provide livelihoods for all of their employees. And so it's really being that trusted advisor and helping them look forward and identifying what those needs are. And it goes back to really what Ben said, which I think is so important, is really listening, asking the question, what do you need? What are your concerns? And then us going back and figuring out, okay, what do we need to do to help our clients address those needs? And a lot of times we try to be as proactive as possible. And in situations like this, we're asking a lot of questions and trying to respond as quickly as we can.
And as a law firm with services, are you actively trying to generate new business and get new clients, or are you more trying to cultivate the existing relationships that you have?
I know we're definitely focusing on making sure we're taking care of all of our existing clients, but I think the reality is because we are doing that, we're still continuing to get a lot of referrals, and because a lot of our existing clients are forwarding our content to their other professional relationships, we are getting additional new clients.
Okay, well, very good. Congratulations for that. Just another reminder, we're having some very good questions from the audience. So it seems like we're all on the same train of thought here. That's what we're trying to learn. So if you have more questions as we continue here for the next 10 or 12 minutes, be sure and send those in via the Q&A function. Gary, I want to come to you as we talk about this term customer. With your business, do you see a change in demographics that are adjusting their behavior more than others?
And you're directing it to me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I tell you what, I think I already mentioned earlier that there's been a shift away from beauty more towards health and wellness products and cleaning products, right? But I think in general, the shift has been easier for those who are already digitally savvy because they live their lives both offline and online already. So for some, there is no difference between offline and online. For others, it is a bit of a learning curve. It is a bit of separate lives. So with those that have integrated the two, I think my feeling is that they're getting along better as a result.
So is it an education piece that you have to put out to those customers that aren't as comfortable with the online methods?
Yeah, it's a little bit of education and just a little bit of comfort level. Yeah, and for some, you know, let's face it, the younger generation has grown up with technology and they haven't had to learn it. It's just part of their life. Others do have to learn it.
Sure, we're digital natives, as we call
That's right.
the up-and-comers right now. So that's our talk about customers, Gary, but what about specifically with Amway, your independent business owners? Has the way that you engage with your business owners changed as a result of COVID?
Oh, absolutely. We used to do an awful lot of in-person meetings and events, and that has all gone online, and it's, I think they've made the shift very well. They're very much focused on maintaining relationships. So without the human interaction, they've shifted online and still maintaining those relationships. We do interact online more frequently than ever before. We need to give them the tools they need, the education and the products they need to interact with their customers as well. So yeah, that's been a bit of a shift.
Okay, very good. Benjamin, Ben, I'm sorry, I want to ask you this question. Gary just brought up a good point about we may have some customers that are not savvy when it comes to technology. But what if I'm a business owner and I'm not savvy with technology? Can you give us some resources that can increase my comfort level to learning about how to connect digitally with customers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think it would be a challenging time right now to have to crash course learn how to do everything. One, I would first try and find either someone in your network that you trust that can kind of plug you in, maybe with a consultant that could come in for a week. You could take a look at some previous work that they've done, whether it be on social media or you know, web architecture stuff, or even really increasing your customer service side of things. But then there's, the cool thing about, like, let's say you weren't an e-commerce business, but you're like, we should start exploring e-commerce because people aren't coming into my store anymore. I think in the last 2 or 3 years, companies like Shopify, Wix, and some of us have made such progress to make this stuff so straightforward. So I think one thing is, like, step in with maybe a little less fear than you would have 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, even, I've been working in the internet space for almost 20 years now, and it's like dramatically easier to build something online than it was before. But if you can, I would try and find someone who can, at least for a week engagement, maybe for a little bit longer, fully walk you through everything. So a little bit you should learn on your own, but if you're feeling really uncomfortable, it's a great time to bring in a fairly affordable consultant.
Sure, find a friend and get some help. Absolutely.
Yeah, and when I say consultant, I mean, I know not everybody has these massive budgets, especially right now, but it can be very inexpensive. I mean, it could be as much as hiring basically an intern fresh out of college to help you kind of navigate something like that.
Is there a resource that you've used that you can locate freelancers for work like this?
I haven't used any. I tend to just lean on the network of friends and people that I've worked with in the past. But I don't know enough about them, but more and more I keep hearing Fiverr come up, which is a really kind of interesting concept. I think it's FIVERR.com.
Okay.
And they kind of started as a place to get really fairly inexpensive work done, but now people are getting beautiful logos made and campaigns and pitch decks and things like that built for very inexpensive.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Dale, how about you with small businesses? Is there any tools that you can direct small businesses to help become more comfortable with this needed shift to e-commerce and the integration of technology?
Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with what Ben just said. One, we can introduce people in our network, in other words, clients to clients. So we do a lot of that. We have, for example, web design. People don't want to touch it. We may have clients who will do it relatively inexpensive or become a resource because, so we're almost in some way making connections, if you will, that way. So we're kind of our own referral source, if you will, there. The other thing, just kind of build on Ben, I've had a lot of clients who I say, you need a website, and send them to Shopify, Wix, or WordPress, and 3 or 4 days later, they're sending me, hey, check this out. And they're not bad. I mean, it's amazing what people can do when they sit down because it has gotten a lot simpler now. They may not be Google Analytic right and a bunch of other stuff and SEOs, but the point is they're getting up with an e-commerce communication that can work for them. And it's amazing how quickly they can do it. So, and the other thing, if you're looking for the cheapest consultant, youtube.com.
I was going to say, YouTube would be my other suggestion.
Absolutely. Yeah, YouTube is fantastic. Our time is almost up, so we're going to do a quick 2-question lightning round. Kim, let's start with you. As we look to the end of this year and the start of 2021, I have 2 questions for you. What's your biggest fear in terms of customer engagement going forward? And what is the thing that you're most looking forward to in terms of customer engagement going forward?
Okay, I think my biggest fear would be if the internet went down, because that I have nightmares over that.
Don't say
and two, to the second question, the opportunity, I think if we get creative, this current environment provides us a chance to personalize our relationships and how we deliver our services like we never have before. And I think instead of it's so easy to be fearful, but I really think we need to look towards these are opportunities for great change.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I guess I'd say my biggest fear would be not living up to the expectations of having an exceptional online experience because of that's becoming more and more important now, so more than ever. But I also look forward to that. I think that's exciting. So I look forward to the challenge and really, again, like I mentioned before, meeting people where they are, understanding the importance of the personalization and establishing a relationship and meeting them where they are with the right messaging. That's exciting.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dale.
My biggest fear is actually fear. That this fear that exists right now will continue to grow and evolve, and who knows what it'll turn into. And it'll get to a point where a lot of people get paralyzed. So hopefully that does not happen. What I think could come out of it, marketing is changing. This is going to be, when you look back on it, one of the best times for marketers. Those who adapt, those who learn how to communicate better are going to survive and thrive. So I'm really excited to see how this comes out. I think it's going to be more personalization. I echo what Gary said many times. I think it's going to be much better from a marketing to show the strength of it as we come out of it.
Very good. And Ben, final thoughts?
I mean, definitely where Kim's at. She just scared me with the internet going down thing. I do think about that every once in a while. But my fear is probably the same as Dale's, whether it's fatigue or fear becoming a feedback loop that exhausts and tears us apart even more. I know that's a more existential kind of way of looking at it, but it's something that we can feel palpably, I think. And so I'd like to see us as a species kind of attempt to move forward. And I think we should all do that. But I'm also extremely optimistic. When's the last time everyone stopped, the entire world stopped for 3 months to really look at what was going on around them, which is of course prompting some of that fear. But I think out of this, we'll see incredible innovation, and we'll see incredible stories, and hopefully new ways of people connecting and sharing things as well.
Yeah, very good. I think our time is about up, but some key takeaways that I have from this is that people are scared, and it'll take them a little bit of time to come out. But as a business, we should try to be proactive and manage these existing relationships we have, whether it's from a simple phone call, leave a voicemail if they don't pick up and have that voicemail scripted out, send out some personalized private messages to the customers that you know, make it known that you're thinking about those customers, that you value their interaction and you value frankly, their friendship with your business. And I think it's very important to do what the panel has suggested, and that is to listen. It's okay for the brand to take a time out and just sit back and see what consumers are saying through social media. Do a hashtag search if you need to find things relevant to your business. And spend some time thinking about how you can, as a business, improve your own technological savvy and advancements. What are your shortcomings? What do you need to learn to be more competitive? And I'll close with this. Don't forget about what your core competencies are, because they got you to the point that you're at today. Once business comes back, that can be the stepping stone that you use to go on to the next step. And so, panelists, I thank you all very much. I can't believe our hour is already up. I learned a lot. I hope the audience was well informed as well. Diana, I think you're about ready to come back online. So panelists, thank you again.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank the panelists, Dale and Ben and Kim and Gary and Eric, for moderating a great conversation. I'm a marketer by training, and this has been a terrific conversation with all of your experiences and insights into what the world of our consumer engagement and our customer engagement, our relationships with customers could look like as we move forward. And what I take away from all of this, from what you all have said, and this ties back to, should universities have a new grand opening, I think Dale and Kim's responses were right on. We have a holistic approach to students and helping them learn, and it's not just their academics. Will their academics change and how they get some of that? Absolutely. And it's going to change a lot now, but eventually it will, some of the change will stick with us. But what this tells me is we have to help people embrace change and make what we do less transactional and more transformative as we move into a new economy, a new way of marketing, a new way of doing business. And it is going to put people first. We're going to be more of a human-centered economy if we do this right, in terms of what customers need, what we can provide for them, as opposed to just a product and service. So thank you all again. This, as I said, was really a terrific conversation. And I want to thank the audience as well, because your questions were spot on. Great questions that really caused the respondents, the panelists, to have to think through and talk about some of their vulnerabilities and some of their experiences of the challenges that they faced. So thank you to everyone who has been on this webinar. It's been terrific. Our next webinar is in 2 weeks on July 26th, and the title is Innovating Towards Future Prosperity. So thank you all for being with us, and have a great afternoon and hopefully a really nice weekend. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.